Have you ever thought about returning to your former employer, but going back in a new and better role? Have you wondered how to successfully and strategically do that? Well, today's guest has some excellent tips to help you. Today, you'll meet Tim Ziakas. He's the Senior Manager for Strategic Partnerships at the Center for Creative Leadership. Tim strategically left CCL in 2021 and returned to a new role there less than a year later. In this episode, you'll learn how Tim strategically and consciously built his mid-career GPS that allowed him to leave a job on fantastic terms and return to a new and exciting role. Plus, Tim shares his vision for leadership and the Center for Creative Leadership's work to support leaders worldwide. Let's get started. Hello, my friends. Welcome back. This is episode 152 of the Mid-Career GPS podcast. I'm your host, John Nerrill. I help mid-career professionals who feel stuck, undervalued, and underutilized show up to find a job they love or love the job they have by using my proven four-step formula. Whether you're an executive looking to fine-tune your leadership or are beginning your leadership journey seeking guidance, this episode is filled with great tips to help you. Now, if you're uncertain about what's next for you in your career, I want to help you make your career transition as easy as possible. To help you do that, I've written a free career guide called 5 Mistakes Mid-Career Professionals Make and Need to Stop Doing. You can check the show notes or visit my website, johnnerrill.com, to download your free career guide today. As you listen to my conversation with Tim Ziakas from the Center for Creative Leadership, you'll quickly hear that Tim loves what he gets to do every day. Today, as the Senior Manager for Strategic Partnerships at the Center for Creative Leadership, Tim is responsible for identifying, pursuing, and creating long-term relationships with organizations that help further CCL's mission. In this episode, I want you to pay particular attention to how Tim clearly communicates what his vision of leadership is, and also how clear he was about what he wanted next for him in his career. You're going to learn a lot, and it is my pleasure to introduce you to Tim Ziakas.
I'm the Senior Manager of Strategic Partnerships at the Center for Creative Leadership, which is a nonprofit research institute based in Greensboro, where we study leadership, individuals and teams.
We're going to have a great conversation today, Tim, but one of the things that piqued my interest as we were prepping for today's conversation is, so you wanted to be a professional athlete growing up. Tell me a little more about that.
I definitely wanted to be a professional athlete. Being 5'7" and sub 200 pounds makes that extremely difficult. But I played a lot of sports growing up: baseball, basketball, soccer. I was fortunate enough to play some college baseball. Got recruited to play at a small liberal arts school in Massachusetts called Wheaton College. Got to play 4 years there, and quickly realized that while college and certainly Division III is a challenge, being a professional athlete is a whole nother level. So my dreams died, but I was okay with it.
It's interesting how those experiences shape a lot of our life lessons, and it's great you had an opportunity to pursue that. Just for everybody listening, we're recording this on opening day, and Tim and I were commiserating about our love and our fandom of the New York Yankees. So if you're a New York Yankees fan, it's even great to have you, even better to have you here as well. But we're just big baseball fans in general, so we hope it's a great season. Tim, you've got an interesting career walk. And I'd love for you to just share with us at a kind of a high level what your career walk has been after college and how you got to where you are right now.
It is interesting because I think that so much of what we do later on in life, we don't necessarily realize how much of our younger years plays a role in that. And so I would even start prior to college, graduating college. My first jobs were, like most people, very small business oriented in the local town that I was in. But the work that I was doing really opened my eyes to the entrepreneurial aspect of what's possible. And so I worked at baseball and softball batting cages. I worked at bagel shops, small restaurants, and was really able to see what the owners were going through in terms of juggling all the different things that they have to juggle, right? And so there's sales and marketing and operations, but there's also the people management of all those different businesses. And so when I graduated college, like most people, I didn't know necessarily what I wanted to do. I was an economics major. Like I said, I had played 4 years of college baseball. My senior year, I would be lying to you if I was thinking intently about what was happening after spring baseball season. I was going to cross that bridge when I got to it. And so I fortunately lined up a job in wealth management. I lived in New Jersey at the time, going to school in New England, but I landed a job in wealth management, which was in relative terms, a small boutique investment firm, but we managed about $1 trillion of assets. So it wasn't small necessarily. And I managed a book of assets for folks in their retirement portfolios, help them with their life insurance, helping them with their 401ks, college savings plans, and did that for about 3.5 years in Midtown Manhattan. And while I enjoyed it to start, it was challenging. There was a point right around 24, 25 years old where I said, I couldn't picture myself doing this as a career. And like so many other people, I look at my parents and specifically my father. My father worked in the same industry his entire life. Yes, a few different companies, but that's the perspective that I was coming from. And a lot of the people that I knew at the time were in the same boat. And I just couldn't see myself in wealth management for 15, 20, 30 years. And as funny as it was, I was volunteer coaching some baseball in and around the area. And one of the parents owned a baseball and softball academy. And he said, Tim, how about you come work for me? And at the time, living in Hoboken, New Jersey, working in Midtown, I wasn't necessarily looking to make $12 an hour doing baseball lessons. But there was this thing in the back of my brain that said, if there was ever a time for me to actually own a business and be entrepreneurial at 24, 25 years old, now's the time. And so that's what I did. I actually quit my job. I bought out him and a few of his partners. And this is in 2007. So it's just about a year before the financial crash of 2008. And rebranded it and took over their existing lease and ran that for about 7 years and expanded it to another location, became one of the fastest growing baseball and softball academies in the state at the time. Parlayed that into some consulting for sports facilities around the country. I actually managed a YouTube comedian for a few years and helped him book his travel and his comedy events around the world. And then just got into some additional consulting on marketing, branding, operations for these really large sports facilities across the country. Big baseball, softball, basketball, volleyball sports complexes that we see pop up. Spent a little time with some commercial real estate investors, also in the sports industry. And then really started to go into the path that I'm on now in terms of leadership and communication management, training things along those lines. And so I worked for a small boutique firm called Decker Communications based in San Francisco for a bit. And then in 2019, I made the transition over to where I am now at the Center for Creative Leadership. So it's been a bit of a winding road. And I can certainly say that I'm not an expert in any of those fields, but I definitely have dabbled in quite a bit over the years.
Here's the interesting thing about your story, Tim, is that you're a great example of how our career paths are dynamic and they change and they evolve. And I loved what you said earlier about how you couldn't see yourself in wealth management for the rest of your career. And that voice inside of our head starts talking to us and we have to figure out whatever is next. It's one of the things that for people who listen to this podcast, they really are intrigued by how people navigate their career journey. And what it sounds like for you is that your particular roles at the Center for Creative Leadership are in part because of everything you had done before it.
For sure. I would agree with that.
So in your current work at CCL, tell us a little more specifically about what you do there.
So now at CCL, I have a really interesting role because I sort of created it with my two now bosses. It's a role that didn't exist prior to me starting it. And so what I do now is twofold. I work in our societal impact department, which does exactly what you might think. We bring leadership development to pockets of the world that are truly underserved. And so I developed a strategic partnership with associations, nonprofits to bring a lot of our assets into those parts of the world. And then I also work in our partnerships and innovation group, which is still very much strategic partnerships, but involving a little bit more of a tech side of it and more of a marketing strategic play outside of necessarily straight revenue generation. But what's neat about that is that there's a lot of learnings that I can bring to both groups. And I get to touch a lot of different parts of the world that our typical for-profit side of the business doesn't necessarily reach into. So it's a challenging but very unique role.
So Tim, you are one of a group of mid-career professionals who work somewhere, leave, and then come back. And so what I'm curious about is what has to happen for you to navigate and very successfully navigate a created role in a prior organization where you go back and add even more value than what you had done before?
There's a few different things that have to happen. The first, in my opinion, is you have to do an amazing job in the first job that you have, right? And so you have to have this brand that is truly strong in the moment. And so doing great work, being engaged, being a great teammate while you're there the first time is truly important, right? You can't be that employee that is disgruntled and not a great teammate. So that first and foremost goes without saying. The second part is leaving on great terms. And so some of the best advice that I had ever gotten was from the organization that I was going to. And so at the center, my role at the time was limited. I was asked to stand up a new group and a new revenue stream, and we did it, and we got it up and running. But for someone like myself, I wanted to go do more of those projects. And like most organizations, there's just not a whole lot of room to go do that, right? And so I had left on great terms. And there wasn't a whole lot of room for me. What I will say is that on my departure, I was very intentional and authentic about why I was leaving. And I made sure to thank the people that I had worked very closely with. I went to the executive team and I let them know what I was doing and thanked them for the opportunity. And I had put in the back of their brains, this may not be the last time that I hopefully work with you all, which was true. And so I had set myself up in a way that I appreciated the opportunity. I loved the work at the center. There wasn't necessarily something for me here in the next 1 to 2 years. And so maybe down the line, we'll have a chance to work together again. I think that is the only way that I was able to strike up the conversations later on, because it was there was a sense of, well, he did a great job here. He carried himself well. He was a great teammate. Why wouldn't we explore a way for us to bring him back in? And so I stayed very close with some additional colleagues and was just able to kind of strike up some conversations. I kept a really close pulse as to what the organization was doing, even though I wasn't a part of it. And that allowed me to understand where I might actually truly be able to add value. It wasn't, I would love to come back and what do you have? It's, I'm seeing that you're doing these things. Have you all considered this? And is there room for someone like myself to come back in and help you stand something like this up? So that was I would say it's a multifaceted approach, but that's, in my case, that's exactly what happened.
I just want to thank you for being so clear and clean in taking us on that journey with you, because you outlined so many key points. And for anybody that's listening now, if you need to go back and re-listen to Tim's description of all this, it's about 3 minutes. And it's 3 minutes of your time that you can absolutely go back and listen to, because Tim, what you described for us was so more than that proverbial and cliche, never burn a bridge. You so tactically walked us through those particular steps. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, you just did everything right. But to your point, you showed up in a way that was very genuine and authentic to you, and out of complete and total respect for the people who you were working with, to simply say, hey, this may not be the last time we work together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure.
So if somebody's listening and they're in a spot in their career where they feel like there's not a place for them on the org chart currently in their organization, or they want to step out, what was it for you that identified either what you needed or what you wanted to learn in that, let's just call it a bridge job, even though it really wasn't, but let's just call it that bridge job between your first role at CCL and your current role there?
Yeah, I think if you have that feeling of there's nothing necessarily here for me anymore, I think you need to go further and ask why. What is it that you think you should be doing? What is it that you think you're good at? And start to really kind of narrow in on that a bit, right? And so it's okay to have that feeling of, oh, there's no mobility here. There's nothing for me. Everybody can say that, right? And there's lots of people that say that. But why? What is it that you truly want to do that your organization is not allowing you to do? And then start to think about, well, is that what I want to spend my time doing? Am I good at that? What skills do I have that allow me to be good at that? And then you can start to take some of that understanding and go look to apply it. And something that I say a lot of time is that, if you're in your mid-career, right, you're not 5 years out of college, you've been doing some level of work for a decade, let's say, you should have a pretty good sense of what you enjoy doing and what your skill sets are, right? And so hopefully you've had the ability to take some sort of personality assessment, or maybe a 360, to get some feedback from peers. You've hopefully had some professional development conversations with a boss or a manager. So you should have a decent set of skills that you can kind of rest your hat on. But then I would say the second part to this is, you can't just apply those skills to any job and be happy. You have to have an interest, a passion. And so that going out and seeking organizations, companies, nonprofits, any entity that you want to wake up every single morning and go to bed every single night, not worrying about the work that you're doing and being truly passionate about it and enjoy looking forward to the next day, so that you can apply the best skills that you have. That's something that I've applied, again, since I was 24, 25 years old. So it's maybe a little bit easier for me because I started that process before I had done a lot of work in my career. But I actually think that it's what most people could be and should be doing in their mid-career is, what you're good at, go do it for an organization that you believe in, that you're passionate about, that is doing great work that you can get behind it. That to me is how you start to create some really good professional mobility and agility.
It's really good. It's really, really good advice, Tim. And in addition, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about your leadership and how strong of a leader you are, but also how passionate you are about great leadership. And it's not only your own work throughout your career, but also some of the work that you do at CCL. And this year on the podcast, what I'm doing is I'm opening up this larger conversation about helping mid-career professionals be better leaders. So what I'm curious to know from you right now is, given everything we've seen over the last few years, specifically as a result of the pandemic and how work has somewhat shifted in some ways, in your opinion, from your lens, Tim, what would you say is the biggest challenge leaders are facing right now in 2023?
For some reason, leadership development is currently and has always really been thought of training that someone else is going to provide to me for my development. And I would caution people in thinking that way and change the mindset a little bit of leadership development is what you can do for your own professional development. And so people are not necessarily going to always have your best interest in your professional development career. And so the biggest challenge for leaders today is, where do I start? How do I start taking some of this on myself? What resources could I search out, right, and seek out? What trainings could I participate in? There are, the Center for Creative Leadership is one of the largest leadership development providers in the world today. And not just by size, but also by how long we've been around for over 50 years. And so you're right. I probably know more than the average person, just given the way that I work, right? And where I am.
Right.
But this isn't, rocket science necessarily, that you need a degree to understand leadership development. Our research says that leaders, no matter where you are in your career, if you can focus on 4 key leadership behaviors, that you will immediately start to see change. And those 4 behaviors are self-awareness, communication, influence, and learning agility. And I would even call out 2 as the most important. 1 being self-awareness, because if you can't be more self-aware, if you're not aware of how you come across, how you act, what your leadership brand is, there's zero chance that you can communicate well and you can influence others. And the other one is learning agility, which is maybe one of the more uncommon behaviors, just maybe because the jargon is a little off. But learning agility really just means you have the curiosity to go learn more, and you have the capability to comprehend and learn more, right? And so the more that you can kind of push yourself out of your comfort zone, that is going to be how you can develop as a leader. And so when you say, what is the biggest challenge facing leaders today? There are a lot of people who say boundary spanning or emotional intelligence or developing teams. I would go back to the foundation of leadership research, and it's understanding what 4 main leadership behaviors are and what behaviors you need to focus most on. And you can do that in all sorts of ways. There's all different types of online assessments that you could even use. But the challenge is getting leaders to take a little bit more ownership in their own development, instead of looking externally for what is my company or what is out there that they're going to provide for me. Take stock, take ownership of it yourself.
I appreciate that so much, because in my work, especially with my one-on-one clients, I do a lot of coaching with them on where they own their leadership development.
Sure.
What are the things that they're doing? And so for some mid-career professionals, it's understandably, I'm not sure what the right word here is. Like, I don't want to just say difficult, because that just kind of seems to diminish it in some way. But it's almost like there's an expectation that the organization's going to take care of them in everything that they need to do to be a great leader within their organization. And you're absolutely right. We have to shift that mindset in terms of, I own my career, I own my leadership development. What am I doing to help me be the best leader for my team, for my department, for my organization?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What do you think is the easiest win for leaders in 2023? Like, if someone just needed a quick win with their team or their client or inside their organization, what's the easiest thing, in your opinion, they could do to get a win?
Oh, that's a tough one. I would say, we talk a lot about interdependent leadership at the center, and which is different than dependent leadership and independent leadership. And so when you look at teams, when you look at organizations, the ones that empower their teams to make decisions and, more importantly, make mistakes, are inevitably the ones that have the most success. And so you and I talk about, baseball a lot, the Yankees, right? The Yankees back in the early 2000s, when you and I probably were glued to the TV. Joe Torre did not tell everybody what to do and when to do it. He didn't tell Derek Jeter every little detail of what he should be doing. He allowed Derek Jeter and Bernie Williams and Paul O'Neill to go about being themselves as long as the leadership culture was a certain way. And so I would say to somebody that is managing others, or maybe they're a first-time manager, maybe they're managing managers, right? Maybe they're at that director level. We sometimes think that all the answers need to come from us. And in reality, we need to empower the people that we work with to be able to make decisions on their own and make mistakes on their own. And as long as those mistakes are not so detrimental that the whole house comes crashing down, which most likely won't, it allows the team to start growing their leadership capacity and the culture. And that's how managers get promoted to directors, and how directors become VPs, and how VPs become, ET members, is because they're now not doing things by themselves. They're empowering the people that are around them to be better versions of themselves and make great decisions. That's not an easy one necessarily, but the mindset is easy. It's changed. Flipping that script a little bit is easy. Doing the work is difficult, and it takes time. But flipping the script a little bit, I think, is an easy win for people.
I like that. Thank you very, very much. Well, Tim, we're going to start wrapping up here. So what advice would you give someone to help them build their mid-career GPS?
Don't spend another minute doing work that you're not enjoying. Talent, if there's something that the pandemic has showed us, is that there's a ton of talent out there, and there is a ton of companies out there that need that talent. And so 5, 10, 15 years ago, we were limited in our ability to find great work within 20, 30 miles of where we live. And I would say today, you can go work for a company based in Spain and Switzerland and South Africa. You can do remote work. You can do hybrid work. And so don't sell yourself short. You have the ability. You already have developed skills, really great skills. Go apply them to an organization or entity that you're passionate about, that you can get behind. And I truly think that you'll start to see the professional agility and mobility that you want start to come, and you're not necessarily going to have to work terribly hard for it. You can open up doors in ways that you never really thought was possible if you just kind of think outside the box a bit.
Tim, you've given the listeners so many wonderful things to think about today and consider, and I appreciate that so very much. If people want to connect with you more, or more specifically, if they want to learn a little bit more about what the Center for Creative Leadership does and how it can help them, I'm going to turn the mic over to you, my friend, and just share all the contact information and where people can connect and learn more.
Yeah, of course. I would highly recommend anybody that is interested in leadership, their own personal leadership. If you lead teams, go to ccl.org. There is a massive amount of resources. We are a nonprofit. Our sole mission is to expand the capacity of leaders worldwide. So much of the white papers, the research, it is all free. It is all out there for you. And if you have specific topics you want to know more about, reach out directly to me either on LinkedIn, or you're welcome to email me at ziakast@ccl.org, which is my email. Happy to steer you in the right direction.
Tim, I will make sure all of that is in the show notes, but I'm so glad we got a chance to sit down today and have this conversation. I appreciate you. Thank you for the work that you do, and thank everybody at CCL for the work that they do as well. I'm a huge fan, as you know, and I really appreciate everything you do. And thank you very much for spending some time with us today on the Mid-Career GPS podcast.
My pleasure, John. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. Make sure to follow on your favorite listening platform. And if you have a moment, I'd love to hear your comments on Apple Podcasts. Visit johnnarrow.com for more information about how I can help you build your mid-career GPS, or how I can help you and your organization with your next workshop or public speaking event. Don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Narrow Coaching. I look forward to being back with you next week. Until then, take care, and remember, how we show up matters.